A handful of Japan's finest detectives receive a cryptically signed invitation beckoning them to Sunset Mansion, the location of a 40-year-old notorious tragedy resulting in the mass murder of many celebrities, politicians, and detectives. Kogoro, Ron, and Conan arrive, joining the group of reputable sleuths. The speculative consensus is that their invitation sender is none other than Kaito Kid. With the mansion's millionaire owner, Renya Karasuma, dying 40 years ago at the age of 99, the organizer of tonight's banquet gathered the detectives to emulate the horrific tragedy of Karasuma's time, their goal being to find a rumored treasure hidden within the mansion. In a plan spearheaded by Conan, the guests fake their own deaths, smoking out the night's true organizer, a detective amongst the attendees who utilize Kid's infamy to pique interest. The real treasure is the mansion itself, constructed entirely of gold. Incidentally, Kaito had been posing as Kogoro the entire night. After recovering from the traumatic, fever-induced flashbacks of her trip to New York, Ron receives a courtesy call from Shinichi. While reminiscing upon their wild experience, Shinichi details the police's report of the killer, who supposedly committed suicide after their encounter. Shinichi skeptically disagrees. The sparse evidence left at the scene suggests murder, committed by an unknown third party who arrived before the police. Kogoro takes Ron to Dr. Araide's clinic for a checkup. Ron notices the absence of his grandmother and the housemaid, prompting him to explain that they moved to another hospital in Aomori. His own move was delayed in order to finish up transferring the remainder of his clients as he prepares for the upcoming trial of his father's murder. 3 game developers visit the Mori Detective Agency in search of Suguru Itakura, a world-renowned software engineer and former visual effects artist who has recently gone missing. Each of the 3 men's respective companies commissioned Itakura's work, but their concerns now grow as their deadlines approach and Itakura is AWOL. One of the developers accounts as witness from 2 years ago to a shady transaction between Itakura and a large man dressed in black. Conan immediately links this descriptive profile to tequila. The pressing hunt for Itakura now becomes imperative. Admittedly deceitful and prodding tactics earn the group a lead on his hiding place, Hotel New Baker. All company in tow, they arrive at his hotel room just to find his lifeless corpse slumped over the room's desk. Filled with a deep frustration, Conan laments the loss of another significant lead, until his attention is caught by Itakura's digital diary left in a nearby duffel bag. Itakura's death is ruled an incidental murder, the investigation concludes, and Conan manages to nab a copy of the diary. Conan and Ron walk home through the cold snow. Ron's overwhelming, pensive thoughts expose themselves in a moment of emotional distress. She wishes nothing more than Shinichi to be by her side. As Conan struggles for his truth to remain hidden, the heartbreaking tension is cut when Shuichi Akai steps out of a phone booth. Shuichi bluntly comments on Ron's emotional tendencies and mentions how her tears remind him of a stupid woman he once knew. They cross ways, and he fades into the night. Ron explains to an inquisitive Conan that the two have met in New York. He is an FBI agent who sought her safety while alone in the back streets of the city. This new knowledge incites spiraling thoughts. Conan is left dwelling on why an FBI agent is in Japan, if he's related to the serial killer from New York, and if he has any connection to Haibara. Rendezvous at the professor's house. Conan eagerly begins to sift through Itakura's diary. Its contents reveal a dangerous connection Itakura has made to the Men in Black. The organization went to terrifying lengths to pressure Itakura into completing a computer program essential to their operations. Itakura's intense paranoia forced him to submit to their demands, leaving him with a year to complete their precious software. Upon closer inspection, Conan learns that Itakura dropped the program 1 month before its deadline for the sake of humanity, taking on the jobs of 3 game developers to fund his escape out of the country, and leaving the incomplete software at his mountain cottage. A later entry mentions his loss of temper while on the phone with an arrogantly imperious woman from the organization. Responding to his sudden outburst, she answers with, "We can be both of God and the devil, since we are trying to raise the dead against the stream of time." Clued about an email being sent at midnight to Itakura's cottage PC confirming the program's transaction, Conan and the professor drive through the treacherous snowy mountains of Gunma to open it in Itakura's stead. Given only 10 seconds to enter an unknown password, the time runs out and their access is denied. High-tension silence fills the room before the two are startled by the abrupt ring of Itakura's home phone. The voice on the answering machine is none other than Vodka, who demands Itakura to pick up the phone. Conan daringly answers, using his bow tie to emulate Itakura's voice. By manipulating the conversation, he manages to arrange a time and location for the program to be exchanged. Discovering that the contents of the incomplete software are inaccessible without a password, Conan's next best bet is to rig a trap for Vodka in an attempt to expose his identity. Their meeting slated for 4 a.m., Conan preemptively makes way to the agreed coin locker room at Kenbashi Station in Tokyo, lying hidden in wait for Vodka's arrival. Vodka, who orders his subordinates to keep watch on the station's entrance, enters to find a check protruding from a closed locker. Inside is Itakura's program taped to its interior. Spitting out his cigarette and removing his glove to peel off the tape, his hasty efforts are halted when Jin presses a gun to the back of his head. He's disheartened with Vodka's rogue naivety, and deduces Itakura's absence to be attributed to a third party, someone investigating the organization, and someone who may still be in that very room. As Conan scrambles to hide, the two slowly advance, making their way down each row of lockers. Dumbfounded by no one to be seen after thorough examination, Jin maniacally and illogically begins to open a column of empty lockers, stopping just before reaching the bottom, Conan's desultory hiding place. Realizing no adult can fit in such a small cubby, the duo accept loss and flee the station. Conan, adrenaline at a high, accounts his perplexed thoughts regarding the organization's grand intent, eventually passing out due to the lack of oxygen. He awakes to approaching footsteps. Haibara opens the door after finding him with a spare set of tracking glasses. Conan runs out of the station to find that dawn has broken, and word of Itakura's death plays in the ear of a conspicuously passing Shuichi Akai. Haibara senses his disturbing glare as their paths cross yet again, but the feeling is disregarded as they part their separate ways. Through a brief conversation between Conan and Haibara, vague information regarding the history of her family and the development of Apotoxin 4869 is disclosed. Her parents had significant involvement in developing a drug to be utilized by the organization, but both had ambiguously died amidst its development shortly after Haibara was born. The drug's research was ultimately left in the hands of Haibara after their deaths. Her father, Atsushi Miyano, had gained quite a bit of notoriety in the scientific community, albeit under the infamous label of a mad scientist. Haibara proceeds to confirm that her research goal was neither to create a poison nor bring the dead back to life. Professor Agasa has met Atsushi and his wife, Elena Miyano, at scientific conventions in the past. According to him, Atsushi's pejorative label did not reflect his kind personality. His observations on Elena, however, was that she kept quiet and to herself, presumably not knowing much Japanese. Elena had moved from her home country of England to study in Japan. Yukiko Kudo happens to be visiting Beika, and she surprises the detective boys by bringing them to an early screening of the newest Kamen Yaiba movie. Eerily enough, she and Conan pick out a suspicious car tailing close behind while on their way to the film studio. They consider the possibility that the black organization is targeting him or Haibara. Yukiko's stay is short-lived though, as she must catch a flight back to the States. She transfers the care of the children over to one of the film studio's employees, who takes them back to his apartment to nap while they pass the time before the movie screening. A bloody scream echoes through the apartment as the kids wake to find one of the employees standing over his coworker's limp corpse. As the police conduct an investigation, Haibara eyes a black car stationed outside the apartment complex with two people inside, one smoking a cigarette. Professor Agasa soon arrives to take the children home while the suspects depart for the police station. However, this was just a ploy to catch the murderer red-handed, and Conan uses Agasa to announce his deduction remotely from the professor's car. Haibara, sitting in the driver's seat, anxiously spots the same black car approaching through the side view mirror. Acknowledging its passing, Conan calmly assures her safety, but admits the ominous stalkers must have been watching either him or her. Shuichi Akai is elsewhere, driving while on the phone with his associates. Informed that the sight of their target has been lost, he urges them to pursue their other leads, glancing down at a discreetly taken photo of Haibara and the kids outside the TV studio. The claustrophobic pressure feeding into Haibara's paranoia has her bedridden with a fever. Professor Agasa suggests phoning Dr. Araide to schedule her a medical examination. Conan claims to have already reached out to the Araide Clinic, but with no response. Instead, he recommends the hospital in Haido City's Toto department store. Upon hearing of the agonizingly long wait time, the three decide it would be best to kill time perusing the mall before the appointment. They park in the department store's ground floor garage. Heedful to Haibara's well-being and treacherous circumstances, Conan guides her out of the professor's beetle before her gaze is menacingly met by a Porsche 356A. Conan ensures that this isn't Jin's vehicle, but rather it belongs to a group of Porsche enthusiasts sitting in a neighboring 911. Erring on the side of caution, Haibara retreats to the car, with more comfort remaining in solitude. Conan and the professor carry on to the food court, seeking a helping of a particular restaurant's famous egg porridge. A familiar call out to Cool Kid grabs Conan's attention, only to find that they've incidentally encountered Jodie, Ron, and Sonako tailing them in line. The immense popularity of the dish had attracted not only an influx of customers, but the local TV news station. The reporter makes her way down the line, interviewing many eagerly awaiting patrons, including Conan. Struck with the realization that his face had been arbitrarily plastered across the morning newscast, Conan yanks the professor out of line, making a mad dash to return to Haibara's side. The consequences of this careless blunder have already been set forth. Jodie notes Conan's haste, herself making a resolute expression. And driving through the local Tokyo area, Shuichi Akai sharply changes course after catching a glimpse of Conan on the news, the boy from his covert photo. The hustle to the ground floor finds Haibara in safe condition. However, the Porsche enthusiasts have found their freshly strangled friend in the front seat of the 911. Its investigation creating a blockade at the exit of the parking garage. Conan deduces the high probability that the organization has taken note of his slip-up, thus getting Haibara safely home is priority number 1. To expedite this process, Conan helps with the investigation, suggesting the professor monitors Haibara until Detective Takagi can escort them safely off the premises, while circumventing the attention of them. Their conversation is brazenly interrupted by Jodie, curious about Conan's vague illusion. Her, Ron, and Sonako came down to survey the commotion. This unsolicited attention prompts Conan to avert focus from Haibara in a dire effort, dragging the three to join the ongoing investigation. As she's pulled away, a quick glance at Haibara's recognizable hair gets the gears in Jodie's mind to turn, connecting the girl in the back seat to the girl on the bus, and then to Sherry's dart-struck portrait. With Haibara's intensifying condition worrying the professor, he tries the Araide Clinic once more in a last-ditch effort. The phone line connects, Dr. Araide happily responding that he'd been in the office all day, yet doesn't recall receiving a message from Conan. He chalks up the missed call to a possible restroom break. The professor details their desperate situation while Dr. Araide suggests a conceived plan. Staked outside the department store's crime scene, Shuichi Akai listens into their private conversation through a phone tap. Conan finally cinches the investigation with the correct deduction, anxious to see to Haibara's safety. He is dumbfounded to discover both Haibara and the professor are absent from the beetle, overhearing that Jodie managed to urgently slip away. Panicked that the organization had successfully tried their hands, a call to the professor's landline reveals the two have made it home unscathed. Dr. Araide is there tending to a comatose Haibara, and much to the uneasy dismay of Conan, Jodie is present too, responsible for escorting them home. Shuichi Akai again eavesdrops in the nearby shadows, stationing himself outside the front gates of Professor Agasa's home. Vermouth, hidden in isolation, tantalizes Sherry by burning her portrait, proclaiming she's found and locked on to her target. Haibara wakes up in a feverish malaise, hazily recalling yesterday's scramble in the dead of night. The unmistakable imprint of Vermouth's presence pierces her cloudy thoughts, and in her panic, Conan is shown to be drowsily keeping surveillance from the banister above. Morning breaks, and Ron generously delivers Haibara a hot bowl of homemade egg porridge, to which Haibara ignores the selfless gesture, feigning sleep. Upon Ron's leave, she gives in and begins to eat. Professor Agasa learns through the grapevine that Atsushi Miyano left his childhood home under the ownership of an old friend, and suggests paying a visit in search of deeper information. With a smirk, Vermouth listens in on their plans, presumably through a bug she planted. Despite the volatile atmosphere, Haibara insists on tagging along. Upon arrival, they meet Dejima Sohei, Professor Miyano's old friend. He explains to have been using the house as a workspace for 30 years, ever since Atsushi had left to work for a large corporation which recognized his talents, a group likely related to the Men in Black. A fellow worker recounts a surprise visit from the Miyano family 20 years ago, when Atsushi was distracted by a black car perched in front of the property. Within recent time, Akemi had stopped by only to use the restroom. Sensing this as an oddity, Conan and Haibara immediately rush to the bathroom, figuring a tangible item of significance had been placed in secret. Nothing is found, and now wrapped up in the complications of Dejima's murder, Haibara once again feels a targeted, psychological pressure. When questioned as to why she came, she replies with her eager curiosity to learn more of her parents, specifically her mother, who earned the tarnishing nickname Hell Angel. The late Dejima's prerogative to save water in the bathroom clued Conan to search once more for Akemi's left belongings. After the murderer is apprehended, the three begin their drive home, Conan listening to cassette tapes from a vinyl bag labeled 1 through 20. These are the found, treasured relics left by Akemi. However, a moment's listen makes it clear that these were created as messages to Shiho from her mother. Haibara takes the headphones and listens warmly, cherishing the unexpectedly sweet sound of her mother's voice. Vermouth is then seen on the phone at an airport, ordering someone by the name of Calvados to take out their target on sight. Deeply lost in thought, Jodie is caught up in an old memory, depicting a woman who resembles Vermouth tidying up a dead body, before being caught in the act by a curious young girl. A coworker snaps Jodie out of her hypnotic state, mentioning the unfortunate news that Jodie has decided to resign and return to America. Disheartened by her sudden departure, Ron and Sonoko confront Jodie after class, expecting a more detailed and personal explanation. She leaves the girls stumped when claiming her reason for resignation is due to finally finding a key treasure map. Unrelinquishing the specificities of her metaphor, she tells the girls, a secret makes a woman, woman. As one last hurrah, Ron and Sonoko suggest throwing Jodie a tame farewell party. Intrigued, the three make their way to the nearest convenience store to stock up on drinks and snacks. They enter to hear the store's manager berating and savagely accusing an employee of theft. Peeking the corner and finding the wrongly accused to be an old middle school friend of Ron and Sonoko, they sympathetically involve themselves to prove her undeniable innocence. With much struggle, a weighty moment of pondering catches Jodie lost in the same distant memory, clutching her glasses with apparent significance. With encouraging words from Jodie and a supportive phone call from Shinichi, Ron boldly enacts her successful, albeit precarious, plan to draw out the true thief and state her correct deductions. Shinichi waits, still leaning upon the second floor banister, observing and cautiously guarding the premises. However, Haibara sits in the basement occupied listening to her mother's tapes. While still on the phone with Ron, he sharply gazes out the window to his own property, posing the almost hysterical question of if she had paid any recent visit to his house. She says no, and they end the call. Later that night, an inebriated Jodie sits happily drunk alongside Ron and Sonoko, passed out and slouched over the center room table. Ron excuses herself to use the restroom, basking in the complex emotions elicited from today's endeavor. Her eye is caught by a lone scrap of paper protruding from the underside of the bathroom medicine cabinet. It opens, and Ron's heart sinks as she stares into the shockingly snuck collage of photographs. Jodie is no longer trusted. Placed at the doorstep of the famous sleeping Kogoro Mori is an illustriously sealed invitation requesting his attendance at an off-season Halloween party on a ghostly ship. Boldly printed across the front face of the envelope lies the single word, Vermouth. The following morning finds Ron to be on the phone with Professor Agasa, curious if Shinichi had also received this perplexing invitation. Conan, already seen to be holding his open invite, signals the professor to keep his lips sealed. She leaves the professor by anxiously recommending to keep this dicey situation on the down low, and especially out of the ears of Conan. Invested in the letter's contents, Shinichi seems determined to attend, regardless of Haibara's uncanny shock at the utterance of the invitation sender, a cunning and devious member of the organization, and now confirming the codename of their unknown adversary. Conan halts her panic with a tranquilizer dart, removing her further involvement in the scenario. He uses this opportunity to point out a terrifying realization. While his invitation was mailed to Shinichi Kudo, the inner letter's address was made out to Conan Edogawa, implying his identity and likely Haibara's had been compromised. Vermouth listens in coldly. Conan shares he may have deduced one haphazard reason as to why they have yet to be disposed of. Receiving a glamorously embellished text message, Conan confidently smirks, remaining quiet. One problem still remains, as he peers over his shoulder to the Kudo residence. Conan meticulously surveys his home's utility meters, concluding there to be at least one trespasser on the property. Searching through the mansion's tense silence, he enters an upstairs room to suddenly encounter an armed, shaded figure. Come nightfall, Jin and Vodka, once again sat in the Porsche, discuss orders to scope out the aforementioned party, an event apparently meddled with by an independently acting Vermouth. Relentless with his personal feelings, Jin threatens to insubordinately interfere if she is to act out of line, regardless of the fact she is their boss's favorite. Monsters swarm the queue, eagerly awaiting to board the accursed ship. Kogoro is in attendance, and due to Ran's expressed disinterest in horror, Sonoko tags along as his +1, respectively in costume as a vampire and witch. The two make quick acquaintances with a bubbly woman dressed as Medusa. At the check-in desk, the hosts exhibit unfamiliarity with the cryptically composed letter included in Kogoro's invitation, to which it is disregarded and they are granted admittance. The subsequent attendee is a bandaged man, who checks in with the signature, Shinichi Kudo. The tranquilization effects wane, Haibara waking on Professor Agasa's basement couch to the distant mutter of him and Conan. Still dazed, she opens and examines her desk drawer, its contents shuffled, presuming Shinichi had searched for a particular item to confront his pursuers. The party's main event is commenced by its host, the Phantom Ghost Captain, who splits the monsters into groups tasked to solve an otherworldly mystery. Kogoro, Sonoko, and Medusa pair with Frankenstein, a mummy, a werewolf, and the quiet, invisible man wrapped in bandages. Back at the professor's, the ringing landline is answered by a now up-and-about Haibara. On the calling end is Dr. Araide, requesting Professor Agasa, whose chatter is still heard in the background. Replying through her mask that the dialogue is an odd, pre-recorded prank playing through a stereo, she confirms the professor's absence and seems to be home alone. Dr. Araide offers to take her himself to a hospital for a closer examination of her illness, to which Haibara accepts. The ghoulish activities crawl along, heightening to a climactic moment where the ghost captain summons his guests to the outer deck. They rush upstairs, shocked to find the limp corpse of the ghost captain dangling from the ship's mast, halting the night's events and sparking an investigation. The doorbell rings, and Haibara throws on her coat, ready to make the trip with Dr. Araide. She unlocks the door to be starkly cast under the towering shadow of Jodie, who convinces Haibara she has come in Dr. Araide's stead since his car had broken down. She hesitantly complies, and the two drive off, Dr. Araide tailing close behind, concerned and with the car unscathed. Out at sea, investigation is left to the devices of the attendees. While Kogoro and Medusa are busy gathering testimonies, the bandaged man is preoccupied with steadily advancing his own private findings. Kogoro dials the agency to warn Ran of the party's complicated outcome, yet it rings indefinitely, the agency seeming to be vacant. Jodie, followed closely by Dr. Araide down a busy avenue, pleasantly goes about her business, not letting up on any presumed facade. After time in silence, Haibara requests Jodie of a favor. After collecting all required evidence, the bandaged man climbs the ship's central mast, prepared to make a deduction from the crow's nest. With much grandeur, he awes the gawking crowd below, unraveling his bandages to reveal himself as Shinichi Kudo. Amongst the masquerading monsters stands an astonished Vodka, remembering Shinichi Kudo as the high school detective from Tropical Land, his death attributed to Jin's administration of their newly developed drug. Through comprehensive investigation of the night's progression, Shinichi confidently deduces the ghost captain's murder to have been committed by the werewolf, to which he pleads guilty. Cornered, the werewolf releases a trembling outcry, pinning his atrocity on the merciless coercion of a devilish monster who calls themselves Vermouth. Traversing away from the public streets, Jodie lures the trailing Dr. Araide to a secluded open shipyard where she makes an abrupt about-face, ending the pursuit and forcing a confrontation. The two exit their vehicles, Dr. Araide in a panicked concern, questioning Jodie's authoritative seize of Haibara. She instead veers the conversation in the direction of his current affairs. He should be preparing to testify in the court trial of his father's murder. Jodie vaguely alludes to the case's details, with esoteric knowledge of the true culprit, the Araide household's maid. Baffled, Dr. Araide counters her claim, asserting his stepmother to be the murderer. She smirks. Dr. Araide has successfully taken the bait. Jodie cackles with irrefutable conviction. She patronizingly spells out the actualities of that mournful night, a truth which Dr. Araide should be more than familiar with, and a truth purposefully omitted from official police documentation. Like a rat trapped up against a wall, Dr. Araide demands further explanation, to which Jodie utters the token phrase, "A secret makes a woman, woman." These are the recited words recalled from Jodie's childhood, spoken by the killer of her father, the devil herself, the wicked American actress standing before her. Tomoaki Araide sheds his exposed mask. Underneath grins our unshaken target, Vermouth. With clearer remembrance of a disturbing night over 20 years ago, Vermouth set ablaze the mansion of an FBI officer with incriminating intel on her. His young daughter was Jodie, whom Vermouth handed her father's glasses and escaped unharmed. She's enrolled in the Witness Protection Program, growing up committed to following in her father's footsteps. Unimpressed, the conniving actress pieces Jodie's past with intel of her own, addressing her opponent by true name and title: FBI investigator Jodie Starling. Jodie anticipated Vermouth's intent of disposing and assuming Dr. Araide's identity, to which her investigative team faked the deaths of the real family with preemptive urgency, ensuring their safety abroad. Now established in the clinic, the FBI raided her new base of operations, discovering the dartboard pinned with images of Sherry, Angel, and Cool Guy. Jodie, who kept copies of these photos in possession, inquires about the evident resemblance between Sherry and Haibara, as well as the significance of Angel and Cool Guy, who isn't a guy, but rather a kid. Vermouth's confounding favoritism leaves Jodie puzzled. Her record indicates non-aggression when Conan is present, even going lengths to protect his well-being. Furthermore, the youthful presentation of Chris Vineyard from 20 years ago seems no different than her modern, prime appearance, leading Jodie to pose the surreal question, "Why don't you age?" with a burning curiosity. And burrowing deeper, when comparing the fingerprints Vermouth recklessly left on her late father's glasses, it sickeningly matches those of Sharon Vineyard, Jodie concluding that Chris and her mother are one and the same. Jodie signals her associates to advance with instructions to hold Vermouth at bay. Mid-sentence, a bullet punctures the side of her torso, Calvados's rifle smoking as he lies on the freight containers above. Vermouth foresaw tonight's confrontation, using espionage and deceitful manipulation to deter the staked-out FBI agents, planting Calvados in their place. Vermouth, now holding the upper hand, explains her meddling. Her theft and return of Koguro's case files had effectively provided insight on the Araide family case, agitated accurate police investigation, and illustrated Koguro as a targeted victim. This way, the Mori Detective Agency served as an attractor for FBI investigation, the information of those working in the field conveniently in one place. With one final comment, Vermouth readying to deal a finishing blow, she gives credit to Jodie for wielding insight on the classified story of the Araide family. She responds with labored breath, admitting to have been in the dark until enlightened by the child sitting in the passenger seat, who revealed these particulars holding trial for Jodie to prove herself trustworthy. As Jodie sits crippled, preparing for her imminent demise, a nonverbal cue triggers an acute retaliation. Shinichi, basking in compliments of his brilliance, confesses to have been so keen on the werewolf's framing tactic since he himself utilized a similar disguising method. Further grasping the attention of the confused crowd, he clasps the corner of his chin and begins to pull. Bidding her farewell, Vermouth leans in to pull the trigger, not before a shattering glass eruption startles the scene, a high-velocity soccer ball bursting through the window and knocking the revolver far from reach. Out steps Haibara with resolve, shoes sparking with electricity, also tugging at the corner of her jaw. A final, simultaneous tear stages Heiji Hattori perched atop the ship's mast, and Conan Edogawa face-to-face with his ageless foe. Coordinating their audacious reveal was made possible by constant covert communication through a microphone and earpiece. Their pristine makeup artistry had been crafted by Yukiko, priding herself with perfect disguised replications of Shinichi and Haibara, and herself as Medusa. Conan's baited encounter with his home's shaded trespasser was actually just his worried mother staying in Japan to overlook her son's dangerous endeavors. He acted on this impromptu opportunity, ruminating on Vermouth's farce, and ultimately recruiting Heiji to help pull off this stunt. He clues Yukiko in on the deductions of Vermouth's complex identity, surmising her to remember photos of a longtime friend's son, making the quick associative realization that Yukiko's child and Conan are the same. He's confident, soundly asserting reasoning behind Vermouth's apprehension to put his life on the line. Perfectly positioning himself in the rifleman's blind spot, he stands his firm ground, tranquilizer watch equipped. The taxicab rides down the vacant lot, clearly heading in their direction. Conan has the upper hand, commanding Vermouth to surrender, but at the slam of the taxi door, his leverage fades to nothing. Haibara stands helpless as she's come to confront her nefarious predator. Conan, in a turbulent panic, spots her using the spare set of tracking glasses. The item he was ravenously searching for had been confidentially in her possession. He begs her to flee, but she doesn't budge, adamant about standing her dutiful ground. Vermouth snatches this moment of bickering vulnerability, grabbing a distracted Conan's arm and maneuvering his own weapon's aim against him. She fires, knocking him out of play, leaving herself and Sherry as the two starred combatants in commission. Haibara's presence signifies her selfish sacrifice, negotiating her burdenous life be terminated in exchange for the safe welfare of her close companions. Vermouth complies, with conditional exception for taking Jodie's life. She directs blame of Haibara's end to the futile research efforts of her parents, before raising her weapon. Boiling tension at a high, the trunk of Jodie's car suddenly unlatches, capturing the attention of all parties. A woman dashes across the car roof, evading the flying bullets emitted from Calvados's rifle. Heedless warning shots are sent his way. Vermouth desperately pleads for the interferer to remain unharmed. Ron Mori leaps forth, courageously shielding Haibara with her own body. Her truthfully selfless nature has Haibara resonate with a warm reminiscence of her late sister. Vermouth ponders, gathering herself. She's hesitant, but eventually snaps, frustratedly demanding, "Move it, Angel," in an outburst, all while recounting a treasured, year-old memory. A bullet tears through her tricep, shot by Jodie, who shuffled out of the sniper's view. Then, from within the stack of shipping containers, a shotgun pump garners full attention. All convinced Calvados will emerge, their anticipations are subverted when FBI agent Shuichi Akai steps from the shadows. A fear-stricken look falls upon Vermouth's face. Jodie relieved her partner has arrived. He confesses to have immobilized Calvados, the fitting partner of the FBI's target, codename Rotten Apple. The actress once beautiful, now spoiled at the core. With single-handed effort, he blasts Vermouth with his shotgun, survival only attributed to a bulletproof vest. In no condition to continue, she escapes, making a beeline for Jodie's car, taking Conan hostage. She speeds off, and with masterful aim, explodes the gas tank of the car she arrived in, rendering it unusable. Approaching police sirens cry in the distance. Calvados is forced to take his own life. The FBI agents are bewildered by the night's horrid outcome. They commend Ron's courage, who likely questioned Jodie's ambitions and took precautionary measures by hiding in the trunk and phoning the police. Shuichi notes their true target disappointingly failed to show, and takes this opportunity to leave, stepping past the fainted girls. He believes this to be an inappropriate time for him and Haibara to meet. Driven deep into the wilderness, a message from the boss of the Black organization reaches Vermouth, beckoning her to return to their side. Vermouth, however, has slipped up. She overlooked a recording device hooked up to Conan's chest, one which documented the dialing of her boss's phone number. Frantically trying to disassemble the apparatus, Conan, now awake, threatens that this information will be sent to his nearby associate if she is to continue. He proposes an ultimatum, wanting to settle the score directly with her superior. The fiendish actress has one final trick up her sleeve. Sincerely conceding in her arduous hunt for Sherry, she bombs the car with sleeping gas, challenging Conan to a test of endurance. The first to awaken will get their way. Professor Agasa, Conan's associate lying in wait, is alarmed to hear a gunshot through his listening device. Vermouth escaped, slithering away to a phone booth along an interstate. She had shot her leg to remain awake through the anesthetic. On the phone with Jin, she details her encounter with Shuichi Akai, the man she failed to kill 1 year ago as the disguised serial killer in New York, and the man their boss anxiously deems to be their silver bullet. Jin, the man who doesn't remember the names of his victims, was briefed on the events of the Halloween party. Now intrigued about Shinichi Kudo, he inquires if Vermouth knows any further details. With soft recollection of when Shinichi and Ron had saved her life, she spares his identity, denying any knowledge. Deep down, she secretly believes he'll become the organization's long-awaited silver bullet. The professor finds Conan alive and well, recording device destroyed, disenchanted in the passenger seat. The following days see Jodie in the hospital, receiving recovery treatment from her bullet wound. Ron and Sonoko pay a visit, amazed their former teacher had been an undercover FBI agent all along. Jodie explains her mission, however withholding and fabricating details of the other night for their own good. Any past doubt of Jodie's moral character is restored. A knock at the door. Her next visitor is FBI agent James Black, Jodie's commanding higher-up. All has gone well in conjuring a cover-up story, expelling unwelcome police involvement. The FBI presents one final request, offering Haibara the same protective experience that consumed Jodie's childhood years, the Witness Protection Program. Haibara thoroughly considers this opportunity. She recollects the past few months in Baika, the deep familial friendships she cultivated, and the lessons learned from those who mutually care for each other. She respectfully declines Jodie's offer, for the first time set on living her fullest life, free of regret. The dark curtains finally draw shut on this monumental tale. Kier, our next key player, is quickly approaching on the horizon. Thanks for watching.